Well, we are live here with another episode of the Emissary Authors Podcast with Career Factors author Sam Feeney. Today, we're going to live stream this, and this is all about how to unlock fulfilling work without leaving your job. A fascinating book that was written here by author Sam Feeney. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Jason. Glad to be here. Excited to talk about this topic because I think too many people don't like their jobs, and I want to offer them a way out.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. Now, you are no stranger. We're just going to dig in here. You're no stranger to working with people on their careers. Give us a backstory of how you came to this point of writing Career Factors.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into it. I was a teacher for a long time, teaching high school English, and then had to get a master's degree because of where I was living and the state regulations. So chose school counseling and stumbled upon career development as one of my master's classes and just immediately fell in love with it and wrote a course for teachers called Finding Yourself in the World of Work. And then really started digging in on students. I realized as a school counselor that the career development we were giving them, which was a diploma and a transcript to take to college, was not sufficient. And in effect, I was part of the problem. And so I really took that onus upon myself to say, I've got to figure out how to fix this and come about this differently. So started out trying to address a problem for students. And then, most of our lives are not as students. And so I saw this problem carry for decades into people's lives and even a little bit in my own. And so I was definitely solving a problem that I saw close, and then also was starting to feel a little bit in my own career. And that's where
it does seem like a common theme beginning there down in high school, where people are trying to figure out what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. And then, those of us who have traveled a bit on this planet and have done some things, we still come to those points where the work that we're doing isn't that fulfilling. And then we start talking to people, hey, should I change jobs? What should I do here? And you've identified a handful of what you call factors. Now, this is not only from your personal experience, but it's my understanding you've done some research on this and invited other input to develop these career factors.
Yeah, absolutely. This wasn't just my own experiment and a very small test tube. This was a fair amount of research done and gathered from a number of decades around work. And so I was looking for the broad research, and then can I start to apply it? And almost without fail, the research is holding up. And so the way I've arranged it, in particular about with the career factors themselves, is designed to make it very facile for the user to say, can you not rehash all the research, but maybe just tell me what I'm supposed to do now? And that's really what Career Factors is designed to be. And even with the readability, the intentional inclusion of a fictional character in order to help you get through some of the stickier research parts. Marcus helps us jump over some of those things in that.
It is one of the fascinating things about your book that you do write it from the standpoint of a fictional character, because I think that sometimes these reads can be a bit heavy or academic in nature, especially when we bring research into it, and it makes the topic less approachable. And in particular, this idea of career, it's such a personal decision on one's part. And so many, I guess, the word that comes to mind, factors, and I don't mean to say it simply because that's what you've named it, but it is so true that there are all these factors that come into play to bring us to a point where we can really participate, perhaps, in being assertive about creating jobs, careers that really, wake us up in the morning. We want to get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really the barrier, even for myself as an author. This is something that I really appreciated in connecting with you guys about, was I wanted people to feel in that heft of that book the work that had gone into it. But then that was just for me. Then I realized, well, actually, I want people to read it. I want people to be affected by it, to be able to grow from it and learn from it. And so the accessibility for it, like one thing that I've enjoyed is being able to give these out at a workshop, or I work with teachers a lot, and you see them when they get it. There's not a hesitation of like, oh, this is gonna be my shelf. It's an immediate, like, they flip it over, like, oh, okay, this is good. All right, I can get through this in a weekend and get some tools to figure out how my career can go differently than the path it's currently on.
Yeah, and you not only have written this book, but you alluded to it right there with this idea of workshops. So when you're speaking to an audience, give us an understanding of who this audience is and why they care so much.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm investing in particular, the first groups of people that I've been focusing on and that have kind of even are players in this book, in the story of the book, are educators, because for so many of them, they are the front row seat that kids get to careers before they get out into the real world. And I recognize that the messages that we send, we call it in education, called the hidden curriculum. The message that we send students about careers is very, very important. But I don't think teachers or educators tend to their own careers enough to be engaged and to really kind of like show off a little bit, like, hey, this is an awesome job, or whatever, and teaching is very difficult sometimes. Like, it's not always sunshine and roses. But why I'm so keen to help teachers, in particular educators of all stripes, is because when they get that opportunity to be able to kind of turn on their own career, again, the whole premise is that I believe, and I assert and do my darndest to back it up, that you can improve your job satisfaction just by reading that book, not brushing up your resume, not changing jobs, not getting a new role. And so that's very, very important to me, to be able to give that gift of someone, because I know they're going to turn around and interface with 100, 150, 200 students. And that can change that kid's perspective on that. So this is how do I scale this fast, is be able to help teachers really be excited about their jobs, because every day is a bit of a testimony of what their job is, or what work's like for the kids that they're in front of. So it's a big deal for me.
Yeah, teachers, I think, are a very leveraged group of people. What they do on a day-to-day basis changes the trajectory in many cases of a child's life. And I think that each one of us can look back on a particular teacher who stood out, and the way they engaged with us, how they spoke to us, the things they taught us, those have a tendency to stick with us through time. I had a science teacher, I think it was 8th grade, and he taught us kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And he was an odd bird, but he taught us these things that we would just repeat. Now, as a middle 40s-year-old guy, I still remember that. Or my 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Bertrand, she was amazing. She was just fantastic. I have such good memories of her, and it wasn't because she was super kind all the time. She told me that I colored outside the lines and I didn't do so well on coloring, and she was 100% right. But it's interesting that these memories stick with us, and that's why I like the idea that you're speaking to teachers and facilitating them thinking about their own careers. And then through that, perhaps maybe the word is enlightenment, they then begin to teach students better about what might contribute to career satisfaction for them.
Right. And it's funny, it's not even overt. Like I talked about the hidden curriculum. It is just the example that they can be of someone who's really engaged in their job. Someone, like, the purpose of education is not to create more educators, it's to create better people, whatever. Or, for me, the bent of career is, I'd love to give you a career toolbox and you build something totally different than what I've built. That's awesome. That's totally fine with me. But the idea of the perfect picture I have for a teacher or anybody at their job when they are working, and their career factors are being hit, is that they end the day physically tired, but emotionally, spiritually filled up. Like this is it, like whatever it is, and it could be any job. The factors fit any job, but in particular for teachers, and in a system that really tends to have people feeling more and more drained. This is my response to that. This is my hope of how we can change that.
Well, this comes at an important time also, I think, because speaking of pivots, COVID presented, I think, a unique challenge for people when they started considering their careers, because the framework by which we understood career to be and operate in on a day-to-day basis changed so significantly. What did you see as these pivotal changes, and how did that impact your writing of this book?
What's interesting to this is as I said before, writing some of this for myself, I kind of had lived it a fair amount in the years just before COVID and then through that. And what I really saw was an acceleration of what I think was coming anyway, which I'll say for a lot of educators now we're about a year or so out from kind of officially being out of the I think a lot of educators have still been waiting for things to go back to how they were. And I'll paint that picture just very briefly. I started teaching in 2000. And when I started, there was a run for about 10 years where things were kind of status quo. There was an old guard retiring from the 80s and 90s, a bunch of new teachers into the market across the whole country. And then a couple of things started changing about education that really, I think, changed the relationship between the teacher. And I talk about that a little bit in the book. And you have a relationship with your job, right? It might have been a healthy relationship, and might not be the ideal relationship that you want, but you do have a relationship with your job. And that relationship changed in the aughts. I don't know what we're calling that. Anyway, from 2000, 2010. And so when it did, it began, I think, some underlying trends that really not just emerged during COVID, but were accelerated by COVID, that we are going to be dealing with for the next 10 or so years at least. And so I think that the job has changed, and where unfortunately many school leaders are stuck is thinking that, one, it's education, it's different than other industries, we're fine, or that, two, it's going to go back to the way it was. And I'm not seeing that. And the research isn't bearing that out either.
Well, speaking of things the way they were, not only we had this change with COVID, but we also have generational changes that are upon us, going from, I think, a mindset, and you can unpack this better for us. My perspective is we've gone from a mindset of, this is my job, I stick with this job forever, and, like Miss Bertrand, I think she was a teacher for 30 years, 40 years. And she wouldn't probably dream of doing anything different, and probably didn't want to. And now we have this younger generation who the pressure is upon them from a very young age, figure out what you're going to do, and also do it with all of these factors, in mind. But, don't be afraid to change as well. Talk to me about maybe the difference between folks who settled into their lives and their careers, not in a bad way, but they settled in, versus the trend, I think, nowadays, which is go for the better grass when you find it.
Right. And this in education right now, in terms of trends that we see, as far as the research shows, is these two things are happening because of each other. And so what's happening right now, there's a which is allowing for a salary arms race in a lot of cases, because people are saying, hey, there's a scarce resource here, supply and demand. We need to be able to meet that and attract those, which is creating more and more job hopping. And in education, usually after about your fourth or fifth year, you're kind of, okay, I found my spot. Or, outside of a spouse moving for a job, I'm probably going to be here. And that was really a generational mindset. And that's the same mindset, remember, that was producing the go to college, get a good job, used to be with a pension, and then you'll be fine, right? Because that was who we were as teachers. But that has changed dramatically. And so much of those things, and I talk about this a fair amount in the book, is so much of those things were external. And you're meeting a generation who is really being internally motivated. And education needs to be able to respond with something that says, okay, it's no longer going to be, what we can pay, the perks, right? The, June, July, August. We can't give you that. That's not drawing you anymore because everybody offers that. What can we do that's going to be different, that meets that internal, so that you can self-regulate your career satisfaction, your career engagement, and all of that. So the trends that we're seeing now are really allowing, they're shifting the dynamic even a little bit of teachers kind of being in the driver's seat of their careers, which they were in the past. Like, you could always just leave, right? But you didn't feel that way, at least in education. And now you say, okay, well, I can go anywhere. And the caution that I have for anyone who's moving to another job, this includes teachers now, is if you don't know why you're moving, you might find out that the grass isn't greener and that you're making that move there. So both schools need to be responsive to this, but also teachers need to be responsive to this, because if you grew up in a family of educators, which was me, you weren't taught how to think about school in this way, think about education in this way. It's just a totally different ball game that is leaving a lot of people trying to figure out what's their next move, either as a district, an individual school, or as an individual employee.
I like that you bring up this idea of external factors, and this idea that we just kind of plant our feet and never move from that space, and we're there forever, to the internal factors of what do I want, what do I need, what satisfies me, where am I headed. All of these discussions now, which I think which go on partly, I think, in your book of the career factors. It seems to me that there's a profound need for administrators who might be largely in that sort of fixed mindset or external mindset to understand the motivators that other people are thinking about. And if they don't think about those, somebody else is. And maybe the answer isn't, well, people just need to dig in and do the jobs, because that's not enough anymore.
Yeah. And that's where I think and really Career Factors was born out of an analysis of what I'll call in industry, I'll call the middle manager, which is really most building principals, maybe an assistant principal, is they're kind of stuck in the middle of, I have this mandate, my role to do whatever, and then I have all these different teachers. I was a great instructional educator. I'm now learning how to be an instructional leader, right? That's what their master's degree is in, but not a leader of people. And I don't have a toolbox for this. It's I think leaving, like, we use the tools that we have available to us. And so if generationally the tools have been compensation, some carrots and sticks around, performance, and maybe a sense of camaraderie, which is very important. If that's all I have and that's not working anymore, most people are stuck thinking, well, I'm just going to do more of that, instead of, I don't know what my other options are, right? I have that open. So that is part of that design of the career factors, is to hand somebody a toolbox to engage with their team members and with their employees in a different way. And that's actually, we're going to talk more about that in our second session. I'm very excited. I'm actually going to bring on an administrative coach who I think can shed a lot more light on this than we can in the time remaining. But it does force you to think differently. And that's really the goal of any of my books, is to not always necessarily a how-to, if we don't first change how to think.
Yeah. So let's dig in here for administrators who are viewing this or listening to this. What is the best way to use this book, The Career Factors, in their organizations?
By first and foremost applying it to yourself, to be able to be your own guinea pig and say, okay, Like, this is problem number one with most professional development or things that are rolled out for teachers is, I heard this is good, let's do it. Not, I did this, let's do it. And so that's what I would just recommend off the bat, is just do it, and just as a gift to yourself, frankly, because I'm not saying that this book is a gift. I'm saying that being engaged in your job is, and that is really, really important for school leaders to be able to share that with their teams, is something that they've tested themselves, and has that credibility handoff, which is really, really important.
So we would call it in the marketing lingo, eating your own dog food. You know, I've never known what my dog's dog food tastes like, which would make it very terrible for me to figure out how to make a better one. So your advice to administrators: pick up the book, apply it themselves, and be a model. It seems like fantastic advice, and you know, it sounds remedial, but I think people don't really think of it sometimes in that way. That, you know, I invest in myself, and this is what, a $15, $20 investment. I invest in the trajectory of my own life, and if I'm not going to invest in that, you know, who am I to speak out investing in others? And then that model becomes a change, or people can sense a change in us, which then, as we're talking about these leveraged folks of, you know, being teachers, becomes something that students can follow. Now, for an administrator who wants to bring this program into their school district or work with their people, what's that process like, and why is that important?
Yeah, and just one comment on what you said. We're already modeling something. What if we modeled being engaged and excited about your career, right? So anyway,
It can't hurt, could it?
easy steps to learn more would be heading to Echo Education, ECCOeducation.com, and just learn more about how we approach teacher engagement and retention, so that you can figure out if this is something that makes sense for you. So we'll do professional development for like workshop for admin teams. We'll do school-wide, district-wide work for engagement, and we have a pretty cool model that we've developed to be able to help you in the 3 phases to be able to own your teacher career engagement for the rest of time. The way we build it in, we've got a process that's pretty fun, that allows you to own the results that you're getting, which I think a lot of teachers don't always feel like they own the results of their efforts. So yeah, Echo Education will do that. We've got an awesome team of consultants who are helping come in and coach and be able to give that gift to a teacher of really loving their job, so that they can give that example to kids.
Now, in your book, as we're winding down here, you've also got a self-assessment. Give us just a quick overview of what a person's going to discover in that self-assessment.
Yeah, you're going to discover your main drivers, the things that really light you up about your career at the present. And one thing that why I recommend teachers take this, administrators, is you may have gotten into education for a particular reason, for a particular factor. But at this stage in your career, you might need to look in the mirror again, and by taking this assessment, you'll figure out, oh, you know what? I got into this for impact, but right now I'm kind of in a growth mode. Okay. Well, now I've got that set of lenses. Now I can see things differently as I go throughout my day. So the assessment is, it's quick. I call it a 4-minute assessment. It shouldn't take you very long. The ability to then get some results and say, okay, now what do I do with this? How do I apply that next, is really powerful for you to start owning your own career engagement.
Excellent. Well, people can go to the careerfactors.com if they want to learn more about you or Echo Education. The links are in the chat, and they'll be in the stream as well. And we do have a special for folks who are joining us for this live stream. $14.99 at the QR code that's sitting right above my head. It'll also be on right after this broadcast. This is the new edition of Sam Feeney's Career Factors that is just releasing today. And you do want to go pick that up. Like we talked about before, an investment in yourself will always pay off. You're entirely in control of it. And I love what you talk about, Sam, that you're not just, you don't read it just so you can educate other people, but what if you could wake up happier in the morning, have fulfilling work, and go home with a smile on your face? And especially as we're talking about, as even navigating new careers, setting a new pace. Why leave a job when you don't know why you're leaving? What could you do if you just dug in today? Any last words you want to leave us with? And I know that I do want to plug, before we go, also a Leather live stream. Keep a lookout for those links that are coming up. We're going to do a 3-part series on the Sam Feeney's career factors as we unpack the career factors, how you can apply them, and how you can make a difference for yourself. But go ahead, Sam, leave us with some final words.
Yeah, I would just encourage you, kind of, as you said, Jason, that it's worth it. It's something that if you, for a long time, have just kind of let your view of your career and maybe how you function within your career and just let it settle and kind of say, hey, you know what, it's work. That's just what it is. I would encourage you to give this a spin and try to apply it for your own self, because the gift of a rejuvenation in your career affects your family, it affects your finances, it affects your energy levels. I mean, it's just crazy how much it can make a huge difference in your life. So definitely encourage you to check it out just for your own self. Most school leaders are pouring into other people and they're not nearly enough into themselves. And you guys deserve stuff like this.
Good words. Well, thanks for joining us today, Sam. To all of our viewers and listeners, this is a presentation from Emissary Publishing with our author, Sam Feeney, talking about Sam Feeney's career factors, unlock fulfilling work without leaving your job. Keep a lookout for those future live streams where we'll dig into the book, talk about some of those career factors and why they're important to you. And also click on the QR code or scan the QR codes. There we go. Scan the QR codes or click on the links. If you want to pick up a copy right now, it's $14.99 is our launch special. You can also pick it up on Amazon in the future, and you can go to thecareerfactors.com or Echo Education if you're an administrator and you're interested in taking this to your team. Thanks, Sam.